What is up, peeps? Coach Kev here on a Tuesday night. Little history special. And we'll talk more about that. A little something different, but I wanted to do something a little different. And I'm going to tell you about the next coming week stuff that we're going to get into. It's going to be, a little off the beaten path, a little darker stuff, but stuff that I'm very interested in. And it explains how people work and the way people act, the way that they act. Sometimes they have control of it, sometimes they don't. So I think that's interesting, and it's good for more people to know that, because you can identify someone if they're going off the beaten path or that type of stuff. So anyways, Hulk Hogan died, right? I'm sure everyone knows that by now. I'm 46 years old, so was born in 79, probably started watching wrestling 83, 4 or 5 years old. It was big in Pittsburgh. There was a Saturday night studio wrestling. My grandma, my aunt watched that, and all the kids watched all the wrestling. I remember the Saturday night main event shows. They used to come on NBC. That was about the best that we could do to a live pay-per-view, unless you went to the closed circuit television, and they did that. They had it at the Civic Arena, and there was a big screen, and you'd watch it on the big screen, and that's how you used to have to do it, unless you were at the event. Later on, the cable companies picked it up, but I didn't watch really any live ones. Our TV wasn't even set up for that. Years later, we had something called a Scrambler, which you could pick up all the movie channels, and at that point, there'd be like one movie on one channel, and it would run all day long, literally play over and over again. But you'd watch tapes, you'd rent tapes from the video store and stuff like that, and you could watch the matches, but nothing live. But that was a big deal. So Hogan was a huge deal growing up. Everyone liked Hulk Hogan. Most boys and a lot of girls around growing up all were into wrestling. Thought it was really cool. Hogan was larger than life. He was in some movies, wasn't a great actor, but he was such a big deal. He had his own cartoon. I remember watching that as a kid, make different appearances. And I actually knew Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, before I even seen him in Rocky when he was Thunderlips. And that's kind of like set him into the ethos of Hollywood and of popular culture and everything like that. But popular culture is going to be a theme tonight with U.S. history, but our popular culture, United States history. So Hulk Hogan's intertwined in that. Later on, he said some things that he shouldn't have said, and he was, that's his opinion. And if you watch the video where he was, having a fling with Bubba the Love Sponge's wife, which Bubba and his wife knew were being taped, but Hogan didn't know, which is a whole nother weird thing. He admitted that he's racist. Everyone's a little racist. Talked about his daughter dating someone of a different race and things like that. And it really, really deteriorated his image from there. He came back and recently was at the Republican National Convention, which, in today's political climate, no one's off limits anymore. It used to be if you'd said something like that, neither party would touch you, but neither party seems to care about a whole lot of that anymore. So, but he would always be for someone of a certain age. I know a lot of young people don't like him because of his comments, and I get it. But he was just, he transcended a lot of things at that age, and American and this and that. Then you hear what he was like in the background, not a bad guy, but a politicker, knew how to get his way to the top and stuff like that. I was a big fan of marijuana. I just did a members only on medical pot a little while ago. So, but that was it. Someone mentioned Ozzy. I'll say hi to everyone in a minute. Ozzy, yeah. Ozzy was, I knew Ozzy. I knew his music. I was a little young to be like, I was born in 79, so he was rolling by then. But later on, he did stuff with wrestling too. He was at a couple, I think WrestleMania or SummerSlam. And then he became popular culture in the early 2000s with the Osborne show. I think everyone kind of watched that for at least a while. I did. Maybe only a season or so, but it was funny. And then he had come back, and even his last concert, if you go back and watch it if you haven't watched it yet, really performed well for being that close to death. So he was able to kind of pull that off, I should say. But Yeah, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Yeah, it's been a tough week. You know what I mean for kids that kind of grew up in the '80s. Uh, Father Time is undefeated, so it is what it is. Great vacation at Topsail, North Carolina. As always, went out for Brooke's birthday Friday night. Was able to eat at 2 places down there, 3 places actually. They're totally gluten free. I didn't get sick. We cooked the rest of the time. We have a full kitchen, the full apartment. We took Brooke's youngest daughter, Lana, and her friend with us this year. So it was a little bit different, but we still had a really good time and just hung out and just sat on the beach. And that's what we like to do. Not a lot of people around, and I can throw not a baseball, but a football and hit the water from our room. Gibbo, what's up? Good to see you. CJK, Jill, how are you? Aurora, good to see you. Jinx, as always, is around. I won't keep you too long tonight, but I wanted to do like a different theme show. I have some pretty cool, interesting trivia and stuff like that. Tell you people who I liked. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I could hear it now. The Aussie accent, Aussie Gibbo accent. Phil, good to see you. There we go. Yeah, not delivery driver. No. It's the only time I don't smoke. The only days I don't smoke is days that I work. But we have it on our contract, so we were allowed to have it. I was showing them our members only that part of it, and their contracts aren't private or anything like that. Any citizen can look at it and see it. So, but it helps. It helps a lot, So, but so today we did a poll, and the poll was decided that American history was going to be the topic tonight. I wanted to do something different. And the reason I want to do something different is, a lot of negativity going on. That's always right. Everyone, well, maybe it's a little more. It's always going to be like this to a certain extent. And then there's another case where this is going on with different people, and then there's another case somewhere else with different. So it's all, and some of the same people intermingle in cases and stuff like that. So it is what it is. But I'd like to really start getting into the minds of serial killers on this channel and talk about why they got the way that they were, and not maybe focus as much on their acts or different things like that, but what we learned from them and how we took what we learned from each individual person and applied it to other killers or to other cases, and through the profiling and all that stuff. But a lot of these series guys and gals have backgrounds that are very, very similar, and it always involves some kind of childhood abuse, some kind of childhood neglect, something like that. But I think it's all very, very interesting. And probably for the next couple of weeks or so, we're going to kind of go down that path a little bit and deep dive in one person, but we'll talk about different people and the similarities that they had. We talk about head injuries and stuff like that. And I think there's a recipe there that can create serial killers. It doesn't always, but I think you need to have the recipe to create one. So we'll talk more about that, and that'll be kind of the direction of the channel for a little while. And I want you guys to learn all that, and you could see that and maybe apply that in your lives, and different things like that. So anyway, during my members only, when I went to the email at one point, it froze up, but I kept talking for about 5 minutes, and luckily, I think it was just maybe Jinx and Miranda were in there at the time. We're still able to talk to them. So I'm going to share my screen, and here, I'm not going to cover every fact, but just I think intriguing or funny or different. Not funny, but different facts, quirky. Here's we talk about things that people might have known, might not have known. And I don't know if, a couple things real quick before we get started. The first capital of the United States. This isn't the trivia section, but I just wondered if anyone knew the first capital of the United States. What was the first capital of the United States? I also have no prizes to give out either, so I'll send you some baseball cards or something if you want. We have history, Frank, a lot of it. Not as much as you guys do. Actually, not as much as most other countries do, because we're relatively one of the newest, but the first capital of the United States. It was capital from 1785 to 1790. CJK says somewhere in Massachusetts. Northeast is correct, but Massachusetts is not. And I didn't know this either. I did not know this either. Thank you, Gibbo. Gifted a membership to somebody. If you get on and watch the Weed Talk from earlier this evening, I showed a couple of my products and stuff, explain how I use them, why I like them. And I think they're safer than alcohol or Tylenol, as a matter of fact. There is a thing on Netflix, The Tylenol Killer. Oh, it looks like Aurora got it. Just like you planned, huh, Gibbo? That probably backfired for you. That's good. If you know the running joke. But anyways, anybody know? First capital in New York City. And I didn't know this. I found this out a couple days, Thursday, before I was planning to do the show Thursday. The first capital of the United States of America, as it were, was actually New York City from 1785 to 1790. I did not know that. I know that there was issues during the Civil War and stuff like that. If you ever watch the Gangs in New York, you kind of see that scene where they're shooting into the city and stuff like that. And like those things were, I don't know if it was exactly like that, but there was things happening up there. So, and and if you go all the way back to the Revolution, even prior to that, remember New York City, they had troops everywhere. So, but 1785 to 1790, remember 1776, the Declaration of Independence is written, and then from there it was on. The first, and I don't know if these are on anywhere, but obviously the bald eagle is the national animal, the national bird, I should say, not national animal, sign of freedom, whatever you want to call it. Do you know what Ben Franklin wanted? And not the bald eagle. He didn't want the bald eagle initially. He wanted another winged creature. Does anyone know what that was? He said this creature was sturdy. It was proud. He was into this creature. It was a winged creature. It was a bird. But Ben Franklin, what he wanted first, not the bald eagle, Ben Franklin. Anybody can guess what he wanted? I never would have known this either. I never would have guessed this. Or I never would have guessed Ben Franklin's affinity for this animal. Crane? No, not crane. This bird's a lot more edible. Maybe you can eat a crane. I don't know. I don't get into too much. Flamingo, Frank? No. You can eat flamingos or not. I know they're the color they are because of the fish or whatever they eat. I remember learning that in school. It's Ben Franklin thought of this as a noble creature, hardworking. He had a couple quotes about it. You can look it up after we're done. And here's a fitting on it. It tastes really good. It tastes really good. It's not the stork and it's not the pigeon. If I gave you one clue, you know immediately what it was. Now, I said it's a winged creature. Didn't say how far it flew or anything like that. Bird that's a winged creature. It was the turkey. Ben Franklin wanted the national bird or the national, symbol of freedom. I guess it'd be the national bird, to be the turkey. So Ben Franklin, the turkey. The clue was going to be Thanksgiving, and of course everybody would have known right there. Abraham Lincoln is the only president. I'm not reading this off the article. These are other notes I had. Abraham Lincoln's the only president to have a patent He had a patent, a device to lift boats over shoals and river obstructions. So some kind of like pulley system or something like that. And he actually had a patent on that. And the Liberty Bell in Pennsylvania, we know it has a big crack on it, but did you know that the Liberty Bell, Pennsylvania, is spelled wrong? It is only one N on the Liberty Bell. There is two N's in the spelling of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, something you may not have known. I remember being taught that years ago in school, the Liberty Bell. So here's some quirky facts from American history. I made a really cool background. And it's not what you think it's going to be, but it's the history of America. And I'll start talking about what I think our most important historical gift, if you would, to the world is. I guess is a good way to say it. So often assumed, whoops, I missed the first one. Didn't really say anything. It's just a picture. You might know which city was called New Amsterdam. May even be able to recite the Gettysburg Address, but there's more American history. Yeah. It's often assumed Jamestown, Virginia was the oldest city in the U.S., but in fact, it was the first permanent colony established by the English. The oldest city goes to St. Augustine, Florida. I remember learning this in school, too. St. Augustine, Florida was founded by the Spanish, made a brief interlude under British rule, remained the capital of Spanish Florida for more than 250 years. So St. Augustine, Florida. So you don't think of the United States having cities going back to the 1600s, but we do. Even though it wasn't our colonial people that did it, that we would consider European colonials. We talked about this before. I think in my 4th of July show, Independence Day, most iconic holidays. Remember, John Adams said that forever they'll remember the 2nd of July when they voted to approve, but it took another 2 days to finalize the wording of the declaration. And remember, everyone agreed to it, but they would go in at different times and sign it. So what you never saw was these paintings like this. This might be the painting that's actually in the White House or something like it. They were never all there together. Might have been a couple guys together, but remember, they were wanted for treason. They would have been found. They would have been hung. So they would sneak in and do it. John Hancock's signature. I think we all understand and know why that is. He wrote it big as shit. He wanted the king to see, look here, motherfucker. Here's my name right here, John Hancock. So now put your John Hancock on it. Oh, here we go. Maybe this is it. Birthplace of America. Despite its associated with freedom from Britain, the bell was actually forged in Whitechapel. Oh, this is where it tells us that the Liberty Bell was actually from Great Britain. There is a misspelling on it. I don't know if we can make it bigger. No, you just look it up. If you look, there's one N in Pennsylvania. Oh, there it is. There's the mistake on Liberty Bell. I didn't have to look it up. See, P-E-N-S. It's P-E-N-N. Now, the rest of this, hey, maybe we could misspell this. This is kind of funky down here. But the two N's, come on. But hey, we ain't changing it, right? We're American. Fuck that. That's how we do it, and we're not fixing it. George Washington wasn't the first president. Most of you probably know this. The first president elected under the terms of the U.S. Constitution, but before the Articles of Confederation required a president of the United States and Congress assembled to serve a one-year term. The first of up to 8 men to take it was John Hanson, who served from 1781 to 1782. He was a Treasury and Foreign Affairs guy, but that's before the first. I don't think that what one is considered like the president was today, if you would, if they wouldn't have that much power. And it was purposely kind of designed like that. So it just makes you think, they were on the right path. The Constitution written in 1787, ratified 1788, and in operation since 1789 was clearly groundbreaking, but it was a debt of gratitude to the Iroquois Confederacy. This League of 6 indigenous nations, namely the Mohawk, Oneida, Onaga, Cuyahoga, Seneca, and later the Tuscarora, were based in modern-day Ontario, New York, and Pennsylvania. Confederacy's great law of peace, which let them govern while blending harmony with sovereignty. So John Adams, researched, this is one of the things that he took from. He didn't really take from the Magna Carta or anything like this or other constitutions. He looked at this, and this is what worked. So a very impressive thing. Shortest inaugural address, George Washington, 793, 135 words. I believe, and as it says in here, he had really bad teeth, and he heard to talk. And he was like, man, I'll get the job done. I just don't want to talk right now. Jefferson kept bear cubs in a White House. There's a better one than this that comes up, and apparently spent 2 months on public view in a cage in front of the White House, leading political opponents to nickname it the Bear Garden. Yes, an alligator was kept by John Quincy Adams, John Adams' son. He put him in a bathtub. The Marquis de Lafayette, the guy, if you watch the movie The Patriot, that comes over and kind of helps Washington whip everyone into shape, was kind of played off of that guy. He might have been into the little kids, though, so he could have been fucked up too. We're not really sure. History doesn't kind of tell us everything on that. Historians are skeptical. First families have kept a sheep, a dairy cow, a badger, a parrot, and plenty of cats and dogs, so perhaps not that bad after all. But so it's a story. Do we know if it's true? We're not sure. Most people familiar with the Salem witch trials, but you ever heard of Salem tomato trial? In 1820, tomatoes were widely believed to be poisonous. Local legend has it that Colonel Robert Gibbon Johnson boldly challenged his myth in Salem, New Jersey. While eating a tomato in front of a crowd outside a courthouse, he survived without issuing. Tomatoes became a staple of the nation's diet. So if you like tomatoes, thank Colonel Robert Gibbon Johnson, or else not Gibbo, but Gibbon. He had the balls to eat a tomato and prove that they weren't the spawn of Satan, if you will. Did you know this? I didn't know this. U.S. is legally defined no official language. Many countries have their own national language written in the Constitution. Canada lists French and English, for instance. However, despite an executive order signed in March of 2025 designating English as the official language, the U.S. Doesn't have a law enshrining it on its books. So very bizarre. Never knew that. Shortest presidential term was 31 days. This was William Henry Harrison, inaugurated in 1841 but died 31 days later, making him the first president to die in office and the holder of the shortest term ever in the presidency. Man, would that suck, huh? Oregon Treaty was signed between Britain on U.S. June 15th, 1846. It removed the risk of the Third Anglo-American War by settling sovereignty questions over the Pacific Northwest. A lot of this is not covered, but there was a lot of things that were happening after the Civil War, after the War of 1812, after all those things. And this talks a little bit about that. The Underground Railroad wasn't a railroad. I think we all know that, or we've all heard of that. They used series of lights and things like that to sneak people out. There was also another one. I don't know if this is the next one here. Harriet Tubman was a spy, I guess, by definition, should give information. She would take information, should pass information. She was a badass woman in her day. There was a reverse railroad, too, where they would take captured freedmen and return them to their former enslavement. And they had different places where they could hide them there, and their capturers would bring them there. So here's a crazy one. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln created the Secret Service on the day he was killed? When John Wilkes Booth took his faithful shot at Ford's Theater on the 14th of April, 1865, assassinating President Abraham Lincoln shook the nation to its core. Just hours earlier, Lincoln had signed an order to establish the U.S. Secret Service. The agency would take on the responsibility of protecting the president, but it came too late to save him. How about that? The Democrat donkey comes from campaign clashes during the 1828 presidential race. Andrew Jackson labeled him as a jackass. It stuck with Jackson, even using it on his own posters. So, Andrew Jackson was quite a different character. Chester A. Arthur was a dude who might sound old, but Chester Arthur earned the nickname the Dude President due to his love of silk top hats. That was called like a country dude or a city dude or something like that. It wasn't like dude like today, There's more than one Statue of Liberty. There's a Statue of Liberty actually in the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. Not alone, Americans living in Paris gifted France a quarter-size version of the mark the French Revolution. So we also gave them one back. But there's a couple more in America. Could have been called the United States of Earth. In 1893, Wisconsin legal representative Lucas Matildas Miller laid down a proposal to rename the country United States of Earth, believing the more states could be added to the Union. I could see where he was going there, and it's not a terrible idea. The world's first aircraft actually went to the moon. The Wright brothers are famed inventors of modern aircraft, having designed, piloted, and the world's first successful engine-powered. We know about that. Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Ohio, born Orville Wright, says at the helm, staying in the air for 12 seconds. Neil Armstrong, also an Ohio native, was so inspired by their pioneering spirit, he carried a piece of the Wright brothers' propeller and left wing in his spacesuit on the first lunar landing. So a piece of that airplane ended up on the moon or toward the moon. The Hoover Dam could stretch coast to coast. You might have learned this as a kid, but there's enough concrete in there to make a highway from coast to coast. That's the Hoover Dam. Eleanor Roosevelt gave female reporters a leg up. We know all the great things that she did. Her access to her weekly press conference, allowing them to secure stories, male-dominated world. She was quite the politician and political figure herself. The Code Talkers, if you watched, I can't remember the name of the movie, but they were Native Americans, and they were able to track and do different things like that, communicate, and basically be invisible. Let us know where the enemy was, keep us safe. They also fought like hell. Thanksgiving Day kept moving until the 1940s. I didn't know this either. Thanksgiving is a staple of the U.S. calendar, but its origins were less consistent. George Washington declared a day of Thanksgiving in 1789, but celebrations varied till Abraham Lincoln set it for the final Thursday in November. In 1939, when Thanksgiving would fall on the last day of the month, shortening the Christmas shopping season. FDR moved it up. This led to 2 years of confusion with states observing it different days. So 1941, they get it together, and we know Thanksgiving is the third Thursday of the month now. 17-year-old designed the U.S. flag. I don't know if you guys knew this. 17-year-old high school student Bob Heft from Ohio designed a 50-star flag for his history project. So this is when, obviously, way back when, we did not have the 50 states right away. The London Bridge is actually in Arizona. Here's a fun trivia tidbit. London Bridge can be found not spanning the Thames, but Arizona's Lake Havasu. The original London Bridge survived the Blitz, but struggled with modern traffic and was set to be demolished. Enter Eric McCullough, an eccentric Missouri entrepreneur. Boom, he bought it. Let's go to Arizona with it. London Bridge. First words on the moon may have been misquoted. Did he really say the famous quote is one small step for man, one giant step for mankind? Yet Armstrong says he actually says one small step for a man, and the broadcast relay just didn't pick up the according to old Neil. $10,000 bill used to be in circulation. It's just ridiculous, and we don't even need to read why that they got out of it because, wow. America's wild horses date back to the 1500s. So there's been wild horses running in this country since at least the 1500s. Probably go back further. I know one of the places near, I think it was off the coast of Maryland somewhere, Assateague Island, there's still wild horses to run. Be something that was really cool. Abraham Lincoln was a wrestler and a bar owner. Did you know the 16th president was a skilled wrestler and a licensed tavern owner? In his youth, 6'4", Abraham Lincoln was proficient in catch-as-catch-can, frontier wrestling, becoming county champion, and later being inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. In 1883, he and a friend opened a store in New Salem, Illinois. So Abraham Lincoln was a wrestler and a tavern owner. It's just some cool and different facts. Miranda, good to see you again. What's up, JJ? I think about 5 more weeks, maybe less than 5 more weeks to our Wolverines take the field. Miranda, too. CJK, your Jayhawks. Lincoln was a wrestler. Now, that catch-as-catch-can, and you're going back now, way back into the 1800s, but catch-as-catch-can is a professional wrestling style where that's kind of like what they do now, where there's a bunch of different moves and all this other stuff. So I don't know if if that was legitimate or if he was actually like a studio wrestler. We consider professional wrestling goes way back. He had the body for it, right? So I don't know. Could you imagine Lincoln cutting a promo? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah. It'd be tough for me to ask anyone a question that spells the word thought with an A. I think you could probably find better people than that. Okay. How about some trivia questions? How about a couple trivia questions? And again, I have nothing to send you guys out if you win. I'm going to have, after this election's up in November, win or lose, I could send buttons. I have Coach Kev, elect Coach Kev buttons if anybody wants one or anything like that. As kind of like a weird, I don't know, weird YouTube true crime relic. Rock Chalk J Hawk. I haven't done too much other than Michigan. I haven't looked into I usually look at all the Big Ten teams first, and then I'll like branch out to like top 25, just see who everyone got. And now, CJK, they changed teams so much that, like, you might have guys on your team. You're like, oh, shit, we got so-and-so from Florida. Or so I didn't even know that. So it's hard to keep up with. It's almost like the NFL, the free agency. Baseball free agency due up here at the end of the month. Always interesting there to see what's going to happen, who they move and everything like that, who gets traded. The Pirates, they're the Pirates, but they're usually always trading, getting rid of somebody, so they probably will again. But again, I just don't follow them. They just break your heart too many times. I'm 46, and they've sucked for of those 46 years, I would say probably 38 of them, and like sucked. Oh, that's interesting. You know what? It makes me think. Before I answer or ask you guys trivia questions, that's a cool and interesting thing. McKeesport, where I live, a couple different people that were, where did I put that at? That were famous. Jeez Louise. Hold on a second. Oh, here we go. So some famous McKeesporters. These are people that were rumored or pretty sure that came through McKeesport or spent time here. George Washington. He was friends with Queen Aliquippa, and she was a female leader of I'm not sure what Indian nation she was, but there's a about 2 hours northeast of us in Beaver County is Aliquippa High School, and Aliquippa High School is per capita put more players in the NFL than any other high school in the country. Ty Law, Sean Gilbert back in the day. There's just been so many. Darrell Revis. It's just a really tough. They're a small school, but they're really good at basketball and football every year. Phenomenal football team. And they were friends, and supposedly they had went up on Versailles Avenue, it's called. And they had a meeting or something up there, and they kind of overlooked, a few areas. So, hey, Ruckus, what's up? Good to see you. But she was here. Lewis and Clark came to the confluence of the Youghiogheny River and the Monongahela River, which is McKeesport, and on their path and on their trip and on their journey. And there was a whole reenactment for an anniversary a few years ago, and there's a bike trail now, and it's called, I think, the Great something Passage, but it's taken from Lewis and Clark's name of the Allegheny Passage. But Lewis and Clark had stuff to do with that, so they were around General Braddock. Have you ever heard General Braddock? There's a town called Braddock, big guy back in the French and Indian War. And if I'm not mistaken, George Washington worked underneath him in the military. I'm not 100% sure of that, though. I might have that one wrong. Favorites over time. I made a list of that too, just so I don't know if it helps you or not. For what I like, General Patton, probably one of my favorite. Teddy Roosevelt, JFK, RFK Sr., MLK, Stonewall Jackson, and Dick Winters. Dick Winters of the 101st Airborne and the Band of Brothers show. You've ever heard of them, but I just like, tough leaders that weren't afraid to necessarily get their hands dirty too, political, military, all that type of stuff. So, but let me ask you some trivia questions for a little while here. And this is from Parade Magazine. And I'm not going to ask you all of them, but I found some interesting ones that I thought. Okay. On March 23rd, 1983, President Reagan introduced a program that was proposed to protect the United States from ballistic strategic nuclear weapons. What was the program called? Bonus points if you know the nickname. I'm just gonna look for the nickname. In 1983, Ronald Reagan launches a program to counter ballistic strategic nuclear weapons. And there was a nickname for it. The regular answer is Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, and hibernation. Grizz comes out with the answer: Star Wars, the Star Wars program. Very, very good. This one's a lot easier, I think. With the world watching in 1986, the space shuttle exploded before ever leaving the atmosphere, killing all 7 crew members, including a school teacher. I remember watching this in school. I would have been 7 years old, and we had like one TV on on a cart that rolled, and everyone got around as best as you could see it. Ruckus got that one. The Challenger. I've watched videos, and it's interesting. You can do your own research, but I watched videos that they think that some people say that Aurora had it too. That a lot of the people in the cockpit were alive during the descent, and they could tell by switches that were manually moved from the takeoff till then, like someone was trying to control the craft. But you do that research for yourself. I really don't know if how much I believe in that, but I've never heard of that before, but it's definitely interesting. What is the name of the oil rig that exploded in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010, spilling millions of gallons of oil into the sea and becoming the worst spill in U.S. history? And then I have a cool background I almost forgot to play yinz. So let me email that to myself and put it up. Ruckus with it again. Deepwater Horizon. Movie made about it too with Marky Mark. So give me a second here because I made a really cool background. Sometimes I like to make background videos. So these just have different pictures, but there's a method to the madness of these pictures. So when I say this is historical, when I think of historical America, this is what I think of. It all isn't just war. It's famous Americans. It's famous things that have happened. It's all that type of stuff. So let me run this background for you while I answer some questions. And we'll share it. We'll get a little bit better, the pictures. But watch the video, and at the end here, my talk, I'll ask you a few more questions, and I'll explain to you where I come from with our history. Like, what's the biggest thing we've done in history, or what's the biggest thing that we've shared with other countries or the world? That should be a little better. And you'll see different people, sports stars, singers, politicians, war heroes, doctors, all kind of stuff. But to me, kicking Britain's ass. I don't know. But again, this videos like that, I don't even know if we'll be on here long enough to watch the whole video. But I took still images of events and people in time and in history to help with my argument here a little bit. You zoom in there close, that's Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. Lucky, or a little bit of a hint here. If you've ever watched the show Cheers, Cliff was this guy one year for Halloween. Who was the explorer who left Puerto Rico seeking the coast of Florida and was looking for the fountain of youth? The explorer left Puerto Rico seeking the coast of Florida and looking for the fountain of youth. Famous explorer, traveler, and he was dressed up by Cliff Clavin one year as him for Halloween. If you're a Cheers fan, Cheers is one of my favorite shows. If TV would have won the poll, I would have definitely done some talking about Cheers. Not Cortez. Fountain of Youth. And this is just pounded into my head because of the Cheers show, because Cliff dressed up. He comes in the bar and the guys are like, well, who the hell are you? You know, everyone else is like a doctor or a whatever. You know, they're very easy to tell what they were. But the answer, looking for the fountain of youth, was Mr. Ponce de Leon. Ponce de Leon. Here, we should get this one here. Before the battle of Lexington and Concord, who took a midnight run to warn the militia of approaching British force? It was midnight run on a horse. It wasn't like he was out doing a midnight run. The Beastie Boys also reference him in a song. You know, them and their horsey and a quart of beer. Ruckus got it again, Paul Revere. Some of these are just too easy. That wasn't because Ponce de Leon, Juan Ponce de Leon. Maybe that's the right way to say it, or the official name. Here's an interesting one. See if we could get it. Look at the time. During an experiment in 1808, which fossil fuel was burned for the first time as a fuel? 1808, experiment. Which fossil fuel was burned for the first time as fuel? 1808 here in America. Fossil fuel America. East Coast. It had to happen in the East Coast, right? It had to happen probably near me. Ruckus is right. Coal. Coal indeed. I don't think we want to go far back. How about this one? Who did Pocahontas marry? And I wouldn't have got this right. I thought the guy had a different last name, but who did Pocahontas marry? Wasn't John White. First name's right. Anybody? Pocahontas. Who did she marry? It goes by decades. Johnny Appleseed. John Rolfe. John Rolfe. Rolfe. Here's some 1900s. Let's find a good one. In 1906, a tremendous earthquake hit this California city in the early hours of the morning, and it still ranks as one of the most significant earthquakes of all time. What was the city? 1906 California earthquake. Same city it was in. If you're a baseball fan in the 80s, you'll remember. San Francisco. Correct. What are some real? Oh, here's a good one. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces launched a successful invasion of the German-occupied Western Europe during World War II. It was nicknamed what? So this was the ground forces in Europe. What was the name of that whole operation? I remember this from Mr. Dunlap's class, talking about this over and over again, and remember the nickname. D-Day was the landing. That was the day. Do you remember the name of the entire operation when they laid out the entire operation? When Ike laid out the whole thing. D-Day was the day that set it off and started it. And really, it set the tone. Operation Overlord. Ruckus with another one. Operation Overlord. Let's see. The United States dropped 2 atomic bombs. What were the 2 cities they dropped them on? Everybody remembers kind of the first one. 2 cities where they dropped the atomic bomb. Fat Man and Little Boy were the names of the atomic bombs. There was 2 cities. Remember, they dropped them on one city, and then they waited. It was a couple of days and dropped them on another city. Because initially, the Japan didn't. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They might be doing speech to text there. I know what you mean. But they didn't give up right away, and it was unknown whether, hey, are they not giving up because they don't give a fuck, or do they not have their shit together and are able to even do anything like that? So, but again, what you're seeing in the background here are pictures of famous Americans, famous American events. All these people are different. There's Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown. He's up here with pictures of General Patton, Mike Tyson. I think that our most important thing to do with our history is also our most important export. It is our popular culture. Our popular culture, which I encompass everything in, our war history, our movies, our things. That's what people look at this country about. And we know, or the world knows, our history, I think, a lot better than most other countries. Number one, because a lot of the freedoms that we have, other countries don't maybe want to talk about shit or whatever. But we show you what it looked like or what we think it looked like. So we have so many great movies about wars. We have so many great movies about historical events. And there's a lot of other countries that are doing that, but they're kind of catching up. We set the standard on that. So in a way, we change history by the way we view history. That's Dr. Jonas Salk, University of Pittsburgh, cure for polio. So when you saw the show U.S. History, probably, capitals, when did this start? When did that start? How did this go? But I think it's our whole pop culture that is our most important part of our history, and it's our biggest export to the world. And it's what people remember about the United States of America. We've had many war triumphs. We've had broken hearts. We've been attacked. We've come back, and we've done all these things while all this was going on. And I just think it's a testament to the people of the country. The way it was set up, everything's not perfect. Everything's not perfect today, but the people here strive for it. We remember all the things. JJ Woodstock, yeah, it's huge. I don't know if I have any Woodstock pictures in here, but that would be a great one. But I thought like important events, cultural events, and, the history of everybody. There's a ton of people that, say, well, you have the history of this and the history of that. I put all that history together. All that, it's our history. It's all American history. If it happened here and you're from here, it's American history. And there's crazy shit like Manson that happens. It's part of the whole thing. You got to take the good with the bad and look at it as a whole. And people look at our country and say, wow, I'd love to live here. Wow. Look what they're doing. Look how they're able to show what the war in World War II looked like. Look at the Revolutionary War. Look what they're able to do. And maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but we give people a peek into the past. And we were kind of the first country to do that. There's other countries that have done movies, and don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, Hollywood's the base, man. Hollywood's figured it all out. So Colin Powell, probably one of the greatest Americans that ever lived right there, I think. Certainly one of the greatest Americans that ever lived there, Pat Tillman. But all these stories are all intertwined. So the history, the trivia, I love trivia. I love finding out new things and new facts. And I thought it would be cool to do a show about this. But the end message of this, and as we look at our our background here is our culture, American culture, not necessarily pop culture, but our culture, the way we live is our largest export. And I think if everyone would get wiped off the planet tomorrow and someone came here and found stuff and said, what was this country known for? Wow, it was kind of the way they lived, the way they expressed themselves, the chances that they took. And that's how we got to where we got to now. But I love trivia too, Ruckus. I really love American history. Anytime I watch Jeopardy, and that I haven't watched it in a while, but anytime that comes up, I'm really good. U.S. history, even European history. I think it's all very cool. I was one of the few classes in high school I really got into. But when I look at American history, I want to encompass everything. Babe Ruth, General Patton, Mike Tyson, Steven Spielberg. Like it's all encompassing for me when I talk U.S. history. It's not just like our wars, our government, and stuff like that. I think it's so important to include all that. There you go. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. George Patton. George Patton had balls like two heads duct taped together, right? George C. Scott in the movie Patton, if you never watched it, it's absolutely fantastic. Probably his best performance, one of the best performances I've ever seen in a movie. So, real quick before I get out of here. So that is, oh man, I don't want to say the wrong name. I don't know if that was Crazy Horse or not. I could have that wrong, but anyways, at the end of Cheers on the last episode, you see Sam Malone go and there's a picture that's crooked and he straightens it out. That picture hung in Coach Ernie Pantuzzo. Nicholas Costello was the actor who played Coach. He passed away. If you watch the last episode of Cheers and see that, he had that hanging in his trailer, and they put that up and left it up so he was always on the set, and it gave him a seat. There you go. A shout out on the way out. So that's some Cheers trivia that you didn't even expect. The Miracle on Ice. We could go on forever, but I think that this is our history. All this. When I talk U.S. history, I talk it all. Sitting Bull. That's who it is, Ruckus. It's Sitting Bull. You might even know that story about Cheers. Yeah, Sitting Bull. So, but I'm going to leave you guys to it. Back to work tomorrow. It's going to be super hot tomorrow. But hey, it is what it is at work. If it is, it is. You can always cool off, and they have to let you go home and around 8 o'clock the next day. It could keep you a little bit later, but usually it isn't that long. So, hey. But I appreciate you coming in and joining tonight. Something a little different. Look out for new content coming up. And again, I want to kind of go down a path that's maybe a little bit darker, but I want to know what's inside their heads, why they think the way they do, what's happened to them, and the experiences that they had early in their lives, these series killers that are kind of the same down the line. So how can we see it? How can we look out for it? How can we help people out or let people know, hey, something's wrong here? Thank you all. Thank you, Ruckus, for answering all the questions. I wish I had something cool to send you. I'll get you something one day. We'll put a shirt order or something in. And after the election in November, I'll send anyone that wants a button. My mom bought 30. She might buy more. I don't know. But I'm not going to use them again. I don't think so. All right, everybody. I appreciate you coming in and joining for U.S. History Night, which my idea of history might be different than everyone else's, but learned some cool stuff. If I got anything wrong, check it out and correct me. Absolutely. Frank C. You deserve nothing. I'm going to send you one too across the pond there. Get your Coach Kev button. Coach Kev for school board. But I thank you all so much for joining. Check everything out from your favorite creators. Support. See you guys in Discord. I don't comment as much, but I laugh my ass off. Probably once a day. Sometimes I pop in 2 or 3 times, but I try to check in at night and see, make sure I don't miss nothing's going on. There's been some really, really good shit in there lately, so it's pretty funny. But all right, everybody, I love you. Thanks for coming in, and have a great rest of your week.